Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Hedwige. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you on stage, and I'm so excited to have that much of amazing and inspiring managers at Gulf Bank. The ladies you've seen here, some of them are new, some of them have been over 10, 15 years in the bank. I spot some faces. And, it's our role to show them how to own their career today. And I really encourage you all to ask questions to Ms. Hedwige. She's here in Kuwait for 2 days. You have her for an hour. So have as much questions as you can. If you want to submit your question, just scan the QR code, write your questions. If you see a question that you like, just do a thumbs up or like on it, just to up the question if there's more questions. So I'm going to monitor the questions as we go. Of course, I have my own list of questions, but I'm going to also monitor the questions so we can pick up as we go. So to start, I read in your articles that you say that you grew up only as another girl, or only as a girl, and you are one of 7 sisters, right? Tell me about your upbringing and how that affect you being, pro-equality and so on.
Yes, so thank you so much for the invite, and it's so great to be here amongst the highly talented women of Gulf Bank. So indeed, when I was born, I was a huge disappointment for my parents. Huge disappointment, because they already had one child, and that happened to be a girl. And for the second, they only had the name for a boy. Because that was what they were thinking. A boy is what we need. So it was a second girl. I didn't have a name. And then we ended up with 7 girls. And my mom was so sick, she couldn't have any more child. But this is actually the root of my mission in life. Because when I was only 4 or 5 years old, I started to understand what was behind. And when I started to think, okay, what do I want? How do I survive? That is what I thought. If I can do something once upon a day, if I'm in a position of influence or impact, I will try to make it worthwhile being a girl as much as it is worthwhile being a boy. And I try to keep my promise. And so that is what I've been doing for more than 25 years now, every single day.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things we always think about, or a lot of the women or managers think about, is, leadership is associated with masculinity, with being masculine. You got to be tough, you got to be assertive, you got to be hard, walk the walk like a man to be a manager, to be a big boss. But if we look at history, we have enough women leaders in history. And if I'm going to also focus on our own history here in the region, in the Arab history, the first Minister of Commerce in the Islamic was Shafa bint Abdullah, اللي كان عمر بن الخطاب حطها وزيرة التجارة, كان اسمه تدير السوق. There was Sayyidina Khadija, she was a leader in business as well. There was the first college ever built was built by Fatima اللي هي من القيروان. So, Al-Banin, they used to call her. So a lot of examples that we have in our own local history of women leaders, but we still don't learn from history and associate that with, losing your feminine side. Do you think, what do you think about losing the feminine side to be a leader, to be a boss?
No, of course not, because you cannot lose the most precious thing that you have. And that is who you are, your identity, your femininity. And I would also like to challenge a little bit that idea of we see too little leaders. I learned leadership skills when I was indeed 9 years old. And the 7th child was born, and I was supposed to take care of the youngest. That is how my leadership skills started. And so a lot of us have actually started to become a leader because you had to take care of a family or a business or at home or conflicts. So leadership is something that you can do in many different environments. And sometimes we make the mistake of only looking at official titles. Whereas I think that as women, as wives, as mothers, as neighbors, we are actually influencing ourselves. And so soft power is one of the most important talents that you have. And so yes, no, never lose your femininity. It's much more than a title. A title is one thing, but your skills and your mission in life is something else.
And you mentioned something about, how you learned those leadership skills, taking care of your own sister, and probably learned it from your mother, And now you have a daughter, she lives in Dubai?
Yes.
She's a teacher.
Absolutely.
Tell me about how you grew her as a leader, because a lot of us here are moms and, have daughters to mentor them as leaders.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to confess, I have 3 kids. I have a daughter, that's my eldest. And being so successful as a mom was difficult for her. Because at first, and it can be the same when you have a successful father, you start comparing yourself. And so it took her some time to find her place. And the way we managed, the 2 of us, was also by showing that success is only one side of the story. Actually, I've had very complicated things as well. And so for her, trying to see the successful mom and then the vulnerability and the things that were difficult for her, that enabled also myself to become more vulnerable towards her and allow her to be actually her own master of her own success. And that can be something completely different. And so now she's a French teacher in the Emirates. I saw her yesterday after 1 year and a half, and it was so nice to see how she's leading her way in her own manner. And so that's lovely.
Amazing. And like you said, we learn through challenges. And I gotta say, most of my great lessons have been through the hardest problems that I've seen. Have you ever decided to quit? I'm sure you've had a long career and a number of issues and big challenges. Was there a challenge that made you say, I want to quit, I'm done?
Yes, and so I would like to share one of my key success factors is that I dogged a lot. It's not that I don't have imposter syndrome or that I think that I can do it all. Of course not. But I've learned to embrace this. Because if at least once a day, I think, am I doing the right thing? Can I do this? Am I sure? Of course, you could say you're not feeling confident, but it has learned me to think twice. And I have that conversation in my head, and I have that conversation a lot with my husband. And then you see, okay, what can happen? How can you prepare? And you prepare even better, and you try to mitigate. So it is not about saying that you cannot fear or having doubts. It is actually protecting you. Because you will start thinking, how can I prepare? What can go wrong? And from those fears, I actually became stronger. And one of my favorite books is called Feel the Fear, but do it anyway. So the fear is not your enemy. It's only the enemy if it prevents you from achieving your goals.
I love that. And yes, I really second preparing and over-prepare. You're never over-prepared. Let me put it that way. You're well-prepared. You're, strongly prepared, but never over-prepared, because that's the key. And one of the things that, personally, I think is, once you prepare for some challenge, it's good to get some mentor or someone who's been there, done that, to help you prepare. Have you had mentors throughout your careers?
Yes. So
were they men or women?
My first mentor was a desperate mentor because it was my husband trying to mentoring me. And at the time, I was not prepared for it at all. So I started my way, lead my way. And I thought I'm going to do it my way. And after 5 years in my career, I was working so hard and I knew I was intelligent and I got no promotion at all. And I was so angry. At some point, my husband said, you sit down and you're going to listen to me. And he started to explain that no matter how much you work and how intelligent you are, if nobody knows about it, if you're not going to look at your environment who can support you, you will have to work double as hard. I was very angry. I started to think, okay, how am I going to deal with that frustration? So my first mentor, I was very lucky to have my husband. He was very patient with me. And he had to start all over a couple of times. But in case of emergency, he was there. So that was my first. The second mentor I had was some of my own. When I wanted to move to the C-suite, the executive board, it was really hard because I was already a middle manager, a senior manager. But to get to that executive suite, I asked the coach with a professional firm, and I said, give me the strongest coach you have, because I know I'm a tough person to coach. And that person explained the need when you want to move into the boardroom is to have not only your own qualities, but to be seen as others as a leader. And that is how to use the energy and the network around you to be seen as somebody who will bring added value to the board. So it's no longer about yourself. It's about the relationship you create with the leadership in place so that they see you as somebody who can enter the room. That was a very valuable advice.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also, showing that value is most of it is communication skills as well. And I'm sure there's a lot of conflict in that boardroom. And that brings me to a question somebody just submitted, was how to communicate conflict resolutions in the workplace without being seen as overreacting or aggressive.
Yes, so it's a question I get a lot, and it's about emotions. It's about emotions. There is one mistake we make a lot. You know about the lady who's crying when she doesn't get her thing? She's overreacting. So actually, what I learned many years ago is that when some people, and very often it's men, when some people yell at you or start becoming aggressive, it's because they didn't learn how to cry. So yelling and crying are actually expressions of the same emotion. It can be frustration, it can be overreacting. So I would say the question is how to deal with emotions. And it is not that you can't have emotions, because emotions is a very strong skill that you have. What I've learned is that when I'm very angry or very sad, I'm perhaps not in the best place to really make my point. So emotions is okay. It's not a problem. But if you have an environment, colleagues or a mentor or your family or a trusted friend that can help you go through the emotions first, you will be able to enter the room or enter the negotiation in a place of strength, rather than in a place of emotion first. So emotion is good because you are a human, we are all human, but if you can use them as a tool rather than as a purpose, it will make you stronger. And so those emotions, don't withdraw them, because the emotions are telling you something. And it's the story you need to address, not pushing it back. But the story is worth to be listened to. So I would say, of course, aggression, it's complicated, but I will tell you another story. When you are entering a very male-oriented environment, that can happen. It happened to me. Sometimes these environments are a little bit like a boxing match. You enter the ring, there is a loser and a winner. Boxing games, I can't win. I can't win if only one has to move. The question is how to move the game and how to enter that place changing the game. And that is how I learned to do. Because I'm a woman, I will never win in power, in strength, but I know a lot of things. And so gradually you can start changing the game so that you bring actually added value.
And yes, I mean, I think as women, we are change makers. We're change makers in the house. We're change makers in the workplace. And Selma, who you just saw on video, was a power change maker in the bank as well. And a lot of the women here that you've seen, some are driving transformations in the bank. Some are making big changes and making changes in that room or in that war room that's happening. I mean, I think it's definitely doable by all of us here at Gulf Bank. And talking about change is the only constant. We are continuously dealing with change, things change, companies change, management change, all of that. How do we, kind of capitalize on change, or basically use change to not affect us or impact us, but we have to be in the driver's seat for change. And basically, how do we create a safe space in our career while dealing with change by being in the driver's seat?
It is, of course, because everything is changing all the time, that for women in this room and women who are listening, each time change can also be an opportunity. So the challenge for all of you is to create that safe space so that whilst everything is changing around you, there are actually two friends in your life. The first really important friend is yourself. So whatever kind of career plan you have, I had to learn through very difficult circumstances, your best friend is yourself. And that's the person you should nurture most. Because whatever is going to happen, having the possibility to come back to yourself to see what are your roots, what are your values, that's extremely important. And the second most important thing is your mission in life, your family, your friends. That is the kind of world that will never change because that is your closest ally. So I would say create a safe space. I've gone through the financial crisis, to many crises. Find then a secure spot that you can actually handle and manage. So as much as you would like to have a very broad mission in life and you should have as many big dreams as you can, it's also important to nurture the here and now, yourself, your health, your family, because that is something that nobody can take away from you.
Yeah, I always say you have to be your own cheerleader, to help yourself. And you mentioned something about having an ally. Sometimes it's important to have male allies, especially when you're in the room and it's full of males, and it happens to a lot of us, like me as a woman, technology, for finance, for Murex, for all of the people, especially in a business sector, we face that. How do you spot a male ally? And how do you, kind of recruit them to help you and encourage you and put you in the front?
Yes, actually, you have much more male allies than you think. There are men are actually very simple. So you have two very easy rules in terms of male allyship. First of all, if you have something to ask, you have to say it very explicitly. So don't hope that they will understand automatically what you have in your head as a kind of wish. That's just too complicated. So say in very simple words what you want, and you have to ask something that can be done in 10 minutes. So these kind of asks, 99% you will obtain. So it is the first step. So of course not transactional, but a much more men than you think are willing to help. Be precise, say why, what you want, how they can help you, and a lot will do. And then it's a question of just repeat. Success, repeat. Success, repeat. Be precise, create allyships. Also in general, in terms of networking, everything is about give and take. Very easy rule. You give, you take. You give, but don't forget to ask. Don't forget to ask. There is nothing wrong with that. And so male allyship is just about creating bondages. Of course, Ambassador Kostinen is a lot about influence and negotiating. It's about creating common ground. It's about creating a kind of majority. And so how to create a majority if you forget half of the population?
True. Thank you. And, moving away from males and going into females, I read this article that say women who support women are more successful in their career. Versus there's always this misconception, and even there's a question that says, how do you handle women who pull other women down? So there's always this, stereotype that if you have a woman and as a manager, you're in trouble. What's your views about that?
So, very easy answer. I only have 24 hours a day. So many years ago, I took the decision to only go for positive energy. I don't waste a single minute to people, be it men or women, who I will never be able to convince or are going to try to be negative energy for me. I don't have time for that. So if you want to have change in society, it's always the same. You have people who are convinced already. You have people you will never be able to convince or who are going to be against. And then you have the middle in between. Focus on the in-between, man or women. And so, of course, I had it that women didn't support me. My own mom, with her education, never wanted me to be in a job, never. But at some point, I had to understand, with her background, she wasn't able to give me this support. So don't blame her. It's what it is. And of course, I had women who didn't support. But as long as that's not the majority in your life, go for it. Don't spend your precious energy to entertain a game that others would like to play for you, the cat fight, because that's one of the biases. Don't let them use your game for that. Go for the positive energy, go for the alliances, and as, of course, all of you, be an ally for others.
Thank you. And that was answer to one question which came in about, if someone from your family is trying to limit you. And like you said, I mean, that's not the only voice. There could be other voices in your family that are encouraging you. So listen to the right voices and don't listen to that one single negative voice. And I think that's important. Now, about, having that networking, like I see this room as a network of women who are all looking to empower. So if you are here and, you are meeting new people in the bank, the lady sitting next to you or behind you, she's somebody who wants to empower. So next time you want to think through a problem, just talk to one of these ladies here. And I think sometimes networking is key by attending such events or other events that are, focusing on women. I also think personal branding, and using channels to show your personal brand is important. A lot of the women see me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the LinkedIn posting stuff, and I loved your profile as well. Can you tell me or tell the ladies how personal branding and networking can help them own their career and build their career forward?
I talk to women every single day. I have that privilege. A lot of women just asking for a talk, asking for a chat. And I always say LinkedIn is the one and only totally free marketing tool you have. For free, can you imagine? And so each day when I talk to women, I have the LinkedIn profile in front of me, and then I listen to the story. 9 out of 10 times, the story is 3 times nicer and bigger and more ambitious than what I see on LinkedIn. Can you imagine a shop? Can you imagine a Gulf bank where they would only promote 1/3 of what they sell? Can you imagine this? So we make the mistake to think that everyone will know what you are about to give. And so a lot of women say, but I don't like to oversell. I don't like to promote myself. But see the other way around. I get questions every week to promote or recommend women. The only thing I can look at is what you show online. This is actually the reality we all face. I can't know millions of women. So please, it's about you helping me find you. It's about you helping searchers and bosses and clients to find you. And so see it the other way around. How can you help others find you? And how can you help others allowing you to help them? So it's about your LinkedIn profile is actually what I want to contribute, how I help, how I serve, and put it in very simple words. Nowadays, you have your biggest friend ever, ChatGPT or something else. You talk to the machine, you say what you want, and you ask the machine to make your LinkedIn profile. It is for free, it works, so it's only 30 minutes to redo your LinkedIn profile.
I agree with that. I mean, and sometimes it's also important to be your real self, And some people, like you said, they're afraid of saying, "Oh, I'm overselling myself," or "I don't like to toot my own horn." But it's okay. I mean, you have to show your value. And one of the things is, I know leadership, is sometimes like normally as women, we have leadership at home, we have leadership at the workplace, leadership at with your own family. But do you think leadership is a skill or a trait by nature?
Both, like many things. It's both. It's something, as I said, I was born a leader when you had to divide the pie between the 7 kids. That is how you learn leadership and how you learn to give and take and manage conflicts. That is how it all started. But then it becomes something that you can learn, because you're curious, because then you learn about how do you lead with multicultural teams? How do you lead when the world becomes digital? So it's also a curiosity that you can all have, and that you can then learn how to lead with, how to learn in different environments, be it a male environment, but it can also be leading in a totally different culture or with totally different challenges, or when you're facing with engineer things. So I think if you really want to be at the top of your skills, you have to continue to learn.
Of course. And one of the things, one of the questions also that came in is, I saw that you are on the Women on Boards, and you are leading this initiatives of having 40% of women on boards, or 40% of either gender on board. And that's in Europe. And when we look here locally, and you have a daughter in Dubai, you work with multiple ladies from Kuwait and so on. We also have that issue, but much amplified. We barely have enough women on the sea level, where to go on board as well. How do you think the challenges differ from here to Europe, or what are the challenges that we face locally here to kind of beat the odds, have more women sea level, have more women on the board?
So actually, we are not that different. It's a question of where you are in terms of timeline. If you look at when did women get the right to vote, when did women get the right to go to education, I was one of the first in my family to go to the university. I was one of the first of my family to keep my job while having children. So it's a question of evolution, and the one coming after the other. I'm really convinced in terms of women on boards that if you don't set targets, change doesn't come naturally. So it will come, but it takes so much time. And it's with everything corporate. I've been in lobbying. I am in lobbying. If corporates don't get objectives, they will change once upon a time, but it will be much slower. So I think, of course, it's up to each country to decide, but I can tell you the EU directive, that was blocked 10 years. Mm-hmm. So don't think that everything is easier in another country. It was blocked for 10 years, and we took up the challenge, like many other women and men, to say, how can we still create change and create agreement? And agreement means that you have to convince the one and the second and the third till you get agreement. And it's about listening, changing the arguments, having a compromise text, and here we are.
And do you think the finance industry, specifically us in banking, do we face a greater challenge having that, the women empowerment or women in C-levels?
So I'm so lucky to be here hosted by the Gulf Bank. What changed in Europe, at some point, the supervisors decided to look at the relationship between the diversity or non-diversity in the board and the portfolio of the bank. And the European Banking Authority evidenced that banks in Europe with an all-male board were both riskier and less profitable. Can you imagine, ladies? I don't know whether there is a risk manager in the room. To have a portfolio that is higher risk with less return, not the best place to be in. So the supervisor said, it's a very risky thing to have an all-male board. And so now it becomes a part of the supervision of the bank, part of the due diligence of the bank to say it's not only about gender. Gender is part of a bigger question. Do you have the sufficient skills around the table? On digital, do you have differences in terms of nationality, background? So gender is one of the lenses that the supervisors uses in the banking environment to see whether you have proper governance. So in a way, of course, it's more difficult and we have very traditional environments, but I can make a case now that it is actually in the best interest of the shareholders and the banks to have that diversity of skills and the best possible people around the table.
Definitely. And I've read so many researches that says, women who, diverse places make more money. They're more innovative. They're more, even their meetings take less time. So there's multiple ways of measuring the value of having women in teams and in the boards and everywhere. Now, the collection of women that you see here, they are from different generations. We have some, kind of say managers, middle generation. There are some juniors. And, the newer generation or Generation Z, whatever they call them, they're always, labeled for being impatient. And they want to become managers yesterday. And that's, what advice do you have for them as the young generation who are a little impatient? And what advice do you have to their managers who are dealing with this impatient? And how long it took you to be you?
So very impatient. That's what I can I confirm. And of course, then comes reality and reality check. I would say the youngest generation, sometimes they were also lucky to have a lot of opportunities to study. And then my own kids, they got a job immediately. That was not the same when I was young. So I would say let them be impatient. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to want a lot of things. And then it's also a very good thing to fail. Because if you're very impatient and you just want everything right away, the chance that you succeed is actually perhaps not 100%. And it's part of the learning process to then hit the wall and see what happens next. But there are two things that are really good about the young generation. First of all, they are impatient. They want a lot, and let them challenge, let them have that ambition. And second, there is much more need for purpose. A lot more young people want to know, what kind of firm am I working with? How do they deal in terms of sustainability? They ask a lot more questions, not only about the money and the title, but about, am I going to spend time with you or with the other ones? So, and that's a good thing. That's also a good thing for all of you ladies to think about, what is your purpose? What kind of change do you want to make? And that is, I think, something that we can learn from the young generations.
Definitely. Having a bigger purpose, in your own life and for your own career is always a big driver. In terms of, more questions that I have a list of questions here. I'm trying to, but I mean, what benefits, what they saying, being a woman leader, or your purpose was actually to empower women and to it. But being as a woman leader, is there an added advantage rather than, male leaders that you see?
Yes, so that's one of the reasons why you should never hide as a man. You always have 2-3 seconds advantage. When I enter a room full of men, you have 2-3 seconds advantage. That's amazing, because they will be surprised or will say, oh, who is this? Use that advantage in terms of getting the attention and then capturing the attention, but really be yourself. So I always smile, if you can do that, it depends on the culture, but I will always keep my smile and I will always keep my femininity, and at least they will remember me. Mm-hmm. That's already a good thing. They will remember your name because you will have. So use that visibility, but use that visibility also in a good way. Because of course you have the first visibility, but then it's about making a difference, making a lasting difference. And then also something I learned, I said a little bit before, even though you can think male and it's a lot about a fight, and that's true, that can be true, but it's also be part of a team. And so that's something that I learned, that I don't have to play the same game to have true impact. I'm not expected to play the same game. And so it's about influencing, and the room is only one small part of what is happening in a company. That's also one of the lessons of my coach. It's about what is said before the board, what is said in between, what is said afterwards. So if you want to become part of the C-suite or the board, it's much more about the relationships, much more than you think actually. Also here, in every single company, the relationships that you build, the information you get on beforehand, and the kind of impact and common ground that you get around the table.
I totally agree. And like you said, sometimes you're the only woman in the room, but it depends on how you see it. It depends whether you see it the odd man out, the visible black duck, or if I'm the one who's easy to remember and I don't have to make an effort, because if there's 10 men all wearing dish dashes, the same thing, it's hard to remember 1 out of the 10, right? But if you're the only woman, it's easy to spot. And I used that myself. When I was in the States, I was always the only woman wearing hijab when I was in the United States. So, some people are like, are you uncomfortable? I'm like, no, it makes me easy to remember. Everybody will remember my name. So it's how I think it's how you take it, like you said, take it positively or take it negatively. Now, sometimes also by, being a woman, it's one of the questions says is, is it a strength or a weakness to show your vulnerability at work, and especially with your superior?
Yes, so I wouldn't I wouldn't recommend to have like a therapy while you are at work. I mean, that's perhaps not the best environment, not for you, not for others. Where I think it's a big advantage is that you can talk about things. You can make things approachable by being a woman. So, for example, when I went through the financial crisis and there was huge uncertainty at work, when I was in the C-suite, I could tell things on behalf of colleagues, or I could address important things in terms of uncertainty, increasing risk of the bank. I could address those things, not saying that I was showing vulnerability, but I was able to speak on behalf of some of the staff and address some specific issues and also address specific solutions because I was a woman. And I could address some of the problems in terms of people starting to lose faith in the bank, people starting to lose ground because I was a woman and because I had the chance to feel and to have the empathy in the corridors, in the room. So it is showing vulnerability in a way. It's actually also showing strength because all of you have much more layers you can work with. You have the traditional power play, but you have other elements as well. Knowing what is happening on the work floor, knowing about the work-life balance. For example, in COVID. In COVID, of course, all of us were very agile, adapting. But women in the work environment knew much more in advance what the challenges would be of actually creating and managing those remote life balances. Because you know much better what it is if the kids stay at home and you have to work from home, how you're going to deal with that. So that is a kind of additional layer that you can bring and you will do it your own way. But well, it's not therapy. It's just about how can you use your skills for the common good.
Beautiful. Thank you. Any final words for our ladies in here?
So I would say you are the most untapped value you can imagine on earth. So you should aim for the best, the highest, your dreams, your mission. Nothing is impossible. And if you learn to use, as Mai is saying, if you can tap into your female network, create friends and allies there, and if you can have that 10 minutes rules to convince male allies, you are invincible. So I would say dream high, go for your mission, your passion, and don't forget to be your own best friend.
Thank you. That was beautiful. It was a pleasure to share the stage with you, Ms. Hedwige, and we'd love for you to come back to Gulf Bank and Kuwait again.
Thank you.